This isn't a story about money or gold, it's about a different kind of wealth. When Pope Francis died, news reports talked about his achievements and leadership, but far from Rome, one woman mourned quietly, not as a Catholic, but as a sister. Maria Elena Bergoglio, the Pope's only living sibling, had kept quiet for years. While her brother led millions of Catholics, she stayed out of the spotlight, until now. After her brother died, Maria Elena finally spoke up. What she said made people cry. "He didn't leave us money," she said. "He left us something much deeper. That's why we're sad." This is the story of Jorge Mario Bergoglio, seen through the eyes of his sister. It's not what most people would expect. If Pope Francis had chosen to live with luxury and fame, the world and his family would have missed out on something greater. He didn't leave behind money or treasures. There were no secret bank accounts or hidden fortunes. Instead, he left behind letters, memories, sacrifices, and love. These were the things that made his family cry, not for what they didn't get, but for what they gained. Faith, leadership, and love. You can't put a price on. For years, Maria Elena said nothing to the public. While her brother waved to crowds from Vatican balconies and met with world leaders, she stayed in her simple home in Argentina, quiet and unseen. But now that he's gone, she's ready to talk. In her first interview, Maria Elena shared stories about the real man behind the Pope's robes. To the world, he was Pope Francis. To her, he was Jorge, her brother who always looked out for her. Growing up in a small house in Buenos Aires, their family didn't have much money, but they had each other. Jorge was the oldest son after their brother Alberto died young. He became the family leader, especially after their father passed away. He worked harder, helped their mother, and kept everyone together. "He wasn't famous to me," Maria Elena says with a smile. "He was just my big brother who read me stories and taught me how to pray." Even as he moved up in the church, Maria Elena stayed in the background. She wanted him to focus on his work without worrying about her. But the distance was hard. As he became bishop, then archbishop, and finally pope, she watched from far away, proud, but missing him terribly. "I understood his calling," she says with tears in her eyes, "but I missed the brother I used to laugh with at our kitchen table." When Jorge became Pope Francis in 2013, everything changed overnight. He now belonged to the world. But now that he's gone, Maria Elena wants people to know the real story, not just about a pope, but about a man who gave everything he had. The Bergoglio family home was small, a simple house in Buenos Aires. This is where Jorge first learned the values that shaped his life. Maria Elena remembers their childhood clearly. "Our mother taught us to live simply," she explains. Jorge took that lesson to heart more than anyone. Even as a young boy, Jorge showed signs of the humble leader he would become. When other boys dreamed of becoming rich and important, he was thinking about how to help others. He often brought home friends who had nowhere to go, asking his mother to feed them too. "We didn't have much," Maria Elena says, "but Jorge always shared whatever we had." Before becoming a priest, Jorge worked regular jobs. He was a chemical technician, and even worked as a bouncer at a nightclub. Maria Elena laughs when people are surprised by this. "He knew real life," she explains. "That's why he could talk to ordinary people so well." At 21, Jorge felt called to religious life. During confession at church, he had a spiritual experience that changed everything. He decided to become a Jesuit priest, a group known for helping the poor. Maria Elena remembers when he told their mother about his decision. She was proud but worried too. Mothers always worry. As Jorge rose through the ranks of the Catholic Church, becoming Father Bergoglio, then bishop, archbishop, and cardinal, he stayed close to his family, but saw them less often. His work kept him busy. "We talked on the phone," Maria Elena recalls. Simple talks, he never discussed church politics or his problems. He just wanted to know if I was happy, and if I needed anything. When asked if she visited him at his official residence, when he was Cardinal, Maria Elena shakes her head. He came to us, always. He took the bus across town, wearing his simple black clothes. No driver, no bodyguards. Just Jorge coming for Sunday lunch. This simplicity defined him. Even as Cardinal, he chose to live in a small apartment instead of the fancy bishop's residence. He cooked his own meals and used public transportation. Money passed through his hands to help the poor. Some people thought he was just pretending to be humble, Maria Elena says firmly. He wasn't, that's how he was raised. That's who he always was. The day Jorge became Pope Francis changed everything. Maria Elena remembers exactly what happened when she heard the news. I was at home, watching TV like everyone else, she says. When they announced Bergoglio, I almost fainted. My brother, Pope, it seemed impossible. She didn't go to Rome for the ceremony. He asked me not to come, she explains. He said, save your money, I'll still be your brother. That was Jorge, practical even at such an important moment. Their relationship faced new challenges. As Pope Francis belonged to everyone, security concerns made casual visits impossible. They couldn't talk as often. We wrote letters. Maria Elena shows a small box of handwritten notes. Old-fashioned, I know, but he preferred it. He said writing helped him think more clearly about what he wanted to say. These letters are now Maria Elena's most precious possessions. They show a side of Pope Francis few ever saw. A brother who remembered family birthdays, asked about neighbors and old friends, and sometimes admitted feeling overwhelmed by his responsibilities. He never complained, Maria Elena insists. But sometimes I could tell when he was tired or worried. I prayed for him every day. Pope Francis's simple lifestyle as Pope shocked many people, but didn't surprise his sister. He refused to live in the fancy papal apartments, choosing instead a simple room in the Vatican guest house. He wore plain black shoes instead of the traditional red ones. He carried his own bags, and paid his own bills. The news called it his humble revolution. Maria Elena says with a smile. But there was nothing new about it for Jorge, it's just who he was. This simplicity extended to everything he owned. Unlike many world leaders who collect wealth and property, Pope Francis owned almost nothing. His salary as Pope, about €2,500 per month, mostly went to charities and people in need. Maria Elena opens a small package that arrived after he died. This is what he left me, she says, unwrapping a simple silver cross he wore, and his well-used prayer book. No money, no property. Just these items that carried his faith. Some critics said his simplicity was just for show. Maria Elena strongly disagrees. If they knew him, they wouldn't say that. Jorge lived simply because he believed too much wealth hurts the soul. He wasn't pretending. Pope Francis often criticized greedy capitalism and economic inequality. He called for environmental protection and supported refugees. His views sometimes put him at odds with powerful people. He wasn't being political, Maria Elena insists. He was being Christian. He believed caring for the poor wasn't optional, it was essential to the faith. This belief came from their family experience. The Bergoglios weren't extremely poor, but they knew what it was like to struggle financially. Jorge saw how unfair economic systems could hurt ordinary families. Some wealthy church donors weren't happy with his message. Maria Elena acknowledges, but Jorge didn't care about pleasing donors. He answered to God, not to money. Despite leading a wealthy institution, Pope Francis lived as if he were poor. His personal needs were minimal. His biggest luxury was perhaps the occasional cup of mate, the traditional Argentine tea he loved. People would send him expensive gifts, Maria Elena recalls. He would thank them politely, then give the gifts away. Nothing stayed with him long. As he got older, Pope Francis faced health problems. His sister worried about him constantly. He had part of a lung removed when he was young, she explains. As he got older, breathing became harder. I begged him to slow down, but he wouldn't listen. Maria Elena reveals that in their private letters, her brother sometimes mentioned being tired, but refused to complain publicly. He told me once, "The church doesn't need a healthy pope, it needs a faithful one." Despite his health issues, Pope Francis kept an exhausting schedule, traveling to many countries, meeting world leaders, and addressing global problems. He slept only a few hours each night, waking at 4:30 a.m. to pray before starting his day. "I don't know how he did it," Maria Elena says, "except through prayer. Prayer gave him strength when his body was weak." When Pope Francis died, the world mourned a religious leader. Maria Elena mourned her brother. "The funeral was so big," she says quietly. World leaders, religious figures, huge crowds. Jorge would have been embarrassed by all the attention. After the public ceremonies, something unexpected happened. Letters began arriving at Maria Elena's simple home in Buenos Aires, thousands of them from around the world. "People wrote to me because I was his sister," she explains, showing boxes of letters. "They wanted to tell me how Jorge had changed their lives, not with grand gestures, but with simple kindnesses they never forgot." One letter came from a prisoner the Pope had visited, another from a homeless man who remembered being invited to breakfast at the Vatican. A refugee family wrote about how the Pope had personally helped them find housing. "These letters showed me parts of my brother I hadn't fully seen," Maria Elena admits. "We knew he was special in our family, but reading these stories, I realized how many lives he had touched." Many people asked what Pope Francis's legacy would be. What had this humble man from Argentina really accomplished? Maria Elena believes his legacy isn't in church reforms or policy changes. It's in how he changed people's ideas about what truly matters. "Jorge showed the world that simplicity isn't poverty," she explains. "Simplicity is freedom. Freedom from wanting more than you need. Freedom to give without counting the cost." This freedom allowed Pope Francis to challenge powerful interests without fear. He spoke against environmental destruction, weapons makers, and financial systems that hurt the poor, all without worrying about personal consequences. He wasn't fearless, Maria Elena clarifies. He felt fear like anyone, but he feared disappointing God more than disappointing powerful people. In a world obsessed with success and money, Pope Francis offered a different way, a life defined not by what you have but by what you give. Jorge didn't die rich by the world's standards, Maria Elena says, but he died fulfilled. That's a different kind of wealth. She opens a final letter from her brother, written just weeks before he died. The handwriting is shaky but clear. "My dear sister, when I am gone, don't be sad about what I didn't have. Be happy about what I was able to give. Everything I gave away made me richer in the things that matter. Love, Jorge." Maria Elena carefully folds the letter. That was his message to me. Maybe it's his message to everyone. In the end, Pope Francis left no money to fight over, no fortune to share, no properties to sell. He left something far more valuable, an example of how to live with purpose and die without regrets. His sister keeps his memory alive, not through expensive memorials, but through simple acts of kindness. She volunteers at a soup kitchen. She visits sick people. She writes to prisoners. She lives simply. The best way to honor Jorge isn't to build monuments, she says. It's to live as he did, with open hands and an open heart. As our world grows more divided by wealth and status, Pope Francis's life reminds us of something important. True wealth isn't measured by what's in your bank account, but by what you leave in people's hearts. The man who could have had everything chose instead to give everything away. And in doing so he became richer than we can imagine. Maria Elena doesn't mourn her brother's lack of worldly success. She celebrates his spiritual wealth. And through her tears, she smiles. Jorge didn't leave us money, she says one final time. He left us meaning, and that's why we cry.